This is the Honest Garage Podcast, the Expert Spotlight Edition, where experts help you drive toward success.
Welcome to the Honest Garage Podcast, Expert Spotlight Series. I'm your host, David Laird, and with me today is Paul Regalado. Today, we're talking training because the technology is changing whether we like it or not, and the shops that invest in their people are the ones that stay ahead. Our guest today is Tom Pacheco, founder of ZEVTech Consulting, where he's focused on hands-on training for EVs and alternative fuel vehicles, especially high-voltage safety and real-world shop readiness. Tom also serves as the standing president of ASA Colorado, helping connect independent shops to training, community, and resources. Today, we're answering the questions that shop owners keep asking. What do I need to know about EVs without turning my shop upside down? What training's actually worth it? What's the minimum safety standard? And we'll also talk about how ASA can help shops get access to training and support locally. Tom, welcome to the Expert Spotlight edition of the Honest Garage Podcast. How are you today, sir?
Great. Thanks for having me. This is a subject that we're really passionate about, and I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you on the show today. And for listeners of the show, they hear me talk about producer Paul every now and then. I'm excited that Paul gets to join us for this series too. So I know that you've been around the industry really your whole life. You mentioned that in the prep call, and I know you fostered a lot of interns who became techs. What was it that made training a personal mission for you and not something that you just kind of also do?
For me, the training was so vital because a lot of guys can just go read a book and they understand what they're trying to do. But when you actually train them and get them hands-on training and you see it through to the end where you know that they can actually complete the task, that's a win. That's what the shops are looking for today. Somebody that can actually come in the shop and do some basic light maintenance repair and not have to have somebody chaperone.
Yeah, applicable training, not book training that they're not going to actually implement.
Yeah.
A lot of shop owners are hearing the word EV and they get a little bit of panic in them and they don't quite know what to do with it. What's the realistic view right now on what's changing and what's being overstated within the industry?
We all know EVs are here. Look at every street corner you pull up to and there's EVs all around you. So in reality, we know that the independent shops will start getting these vehicles filtered into them for basic repairs, emergency repairs, and all that, and all those types of repairs. So the real thing we like to do is focus on, first and foremost, is the safety. We want the technicians to understand the safety, whether you're a guy changing tires at a discount tire or changing wiper blades or the basic maintenance. We want them to understand how safe these vehicles are before we go into any kind of real work on them.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. It actually brings me to the thing that I wanted to talk to you about, which is not every shop out there wants to be an EV specialty shop. And I think we all know that. And I think that's a majority of shops. But like you said, they're out there. They're on every street corner. For the shops that are not specialty shops that don't work on them all the time, what are the things that they need to know so that they don't get caught off guard? And how can they keep people safe?
To me, the biggest thing is they know their limitations. They know that they're not going to take a crashed EV into their shop, and that's a limitation. The biggest thing they need to know is these vehicles are designed very safe if you have the basic understanding of electric vehicles. And they actually do have the basic understanding of electric vehicles because a lot of them are very qualified to work on the low voltage system. And the low voltage system controls all the high voltage system. So if we can just bridge that gap to help them understand that they're more ready for these EVs and hybrids than they really think they are.
That's really cool. Let's talk about safety a little bit. What's some non-negotiable habits or rules or procedures that a shop should have so they don't learn the hard way?
I always tell people when I go into a shop, don't touch anything orange unless you know what it is. I saw a guy take a high voltage safety disconnect off of a Chevy Bolt with no gloves on. And I asked him, did you know you just exposed yourself for over 300 volts right there? And the gentleman said, no. Anything orange, respect it. Respect it until you understand what it does.
Yeah, that's hard out here in Broncos country where everybody wants orange everything.
Yeah.
But it definitely means something different underneath the hood of an EV. I know that you brought up that you don't want people dissecting a high voltage battery on day one, but you do want them aware and capable. Where do you see shops accidentally stepping into EV or high voltage situations without realizing it?
They'll step into them because the high voltage disconnect process is so different from a Chevy Bolt to a Ford Lightning to a Chevy Blazer. And if they don't know how to properly disconnect the high voltage system, and they'll step right into it. If they don't understand the OEM specifications when they do disconnect that, how long capacitors take the discharge. There's things like that that they need to understand the basics. And they're not deep into an EV at that time. They're in the basic fundamentals.
Yeah, it sounds at the surface level there's a real bodily risk, like to the person and to the tech with all the high voltage, but it sounds like there's the ability to do real damage to the vehicle and damage to the shop's reputation as well. Talk to me
Yeah.
a little bit about like how a shop owner should be training their techs on safety for them as a person, but also what it means for the shops.
Well, if a shop owner is going to fully commit to bringing an EV into their shop, fully commit, then they need to, before they even draw one in, a full EV, they should know the basic fundamentals on the safety protocols. One will roll in accidentally. The OEMs have some great basic fundamentals. NFPA 70E has some great protocols on what to do. If they roll in, there's stuff on the internet that can help them with their basic protocols. If one rolls in and he's got a blown out tire on the highway and they get a tire and want to put it on, they won't understand about the one hand approach, the what's high voltage, what's not high voltage. So if they can just understand the basics, and the OEMs have provided some great information online for those emergency times. And I would say that to them. If you have a car show up unexpectedly, take the time to Google what's online about that vehicle. And there's a lot of information. What we train in our training is so much more advanced than that. And we teach them how to remove high voltage components, check for insulation, how to completely dissect a high voltage battery. Most shops today will never be there. And it'll be a while before they do that. Do they need high voltage gloves? It's not a bad idea to have a pair laying around that are certified and protected, and they know how to really check them before they use them in case if they're in an area that has a lot of EVs. A great example, Aspen, Colorado. You look on every corner, there's a Rivian, a Tesla, Lucid Air. Those things get into accidents. They sit in those garages up there a long time and the batteries discharge. And they're asking a shop owner, hey, can you come up here and jump this and get it going for me? And a lot of shop owners say, I don't know how to do it. It's an EV. But the online information really supports a lot of that stuff. And in our class, we teach them how to overcome those little.
So that's great. Let's talk a little bit about a shop that wants to start to be responsible and progress in their training or their application of EV. If you were a shop owner and you wanted to build like a ladder on training and expertise, what would be the first couple of steps and how do they end up getting to you?
We're online. You can Google us through our online, and you can send me an email and we'll respond. We respond. We'll go any place in the country right now. We're working on being in 14 different states right now through a contract we're working on. So we will be in your area soon. ZEVTechConsulting.com. Just email me. My contact information's there. We have an email for information. Be glad to help.
Yeah. What type of financial investment should an independent shop be willing to do at certain levels, right? We talked about just the initial training that we might be able to get from the internet, but as we start to approach systems such as yours and training, what should an owner expect to invest at each stage?
It's a great question, and lucky for me. So we have a shop that's done that completely. They took the time and money to invest in their technicians. They wanted to do a group of shops. They did 12 technicians. The cost for them is $37.50 per technician for the basic training. The trained technicians went there, and they were all A-level technicians, I should tell you, because they are really talented. They went there, they met with us, they went through the class, and a couple shop owners were there. We showed them all the tools that we use on our training, and we showed them all the tools that they would need in their shop. The cost for the basic tooling for a shop is right around $42,000 with some meters, some scopes, some gloves, some boots, a table. And so this shop invested that amount of money, and then they went the next step. They're committed. This shop is committed, and they've done a phenomenal job. They installed electric vehicle charging stations within their shop in case a car came in and had a dead battery, they could bring it back to life if it could be. And on the outside, they also installed charging stations for their customers when they bring their electric vehicles in. They're going to be, and then they went the final step. They bought 2 used Teslas for loaner cars. When a person brings in an electric car, they can take an electric car home. So they've gone the whole thing. So a shop can come to us with their A technicians, go through the training and understand all the safety procedures, the equipment they're going to need, and they can kind of make a decision. So let's just say they're just filling out the EV world and they send their technicians to this training and they say, maybe a little bit much for us because we don't see that many electric vehicles in our area. But the first couple of days of training on the low voltage side, where we teach basic and advanced, and then we teach electric vehicles, then we teach propulsion, all applies to hybrids. And the batteries also applies to hybrid, but they're bigger batteries. So everything they go to are on the thousands of hybrids they see in their shops every day. So they can help them decide whether they're going to pull the trigger and go to complete EVs or stay in the hybrid world. And we have a lot of shops that have taken advantage of it. And then we look for reasons for them to go through this training. In Colorado, most of the state of Colorado, 8,500 vehicles go to independent shops to have them repaired because the state of Colorado doesn't have enough repair shops. These independent shops are certified to work on state cars. So these EVs are going to start showing up. So more and more of these independent shops are starting to be trained to work on electric vehicles, and tow truck companies in Colorado are taking our class so they understand the dangers and the safety ways to handle these cars. And so as we do that, we market that for them. Now I'll go to the ASA side. We market that for them. We share that with the state fleet manager. Hey, these are our shops. One's in Trinidad, one's in Montrose, one's in Pueblo, one's over here. We have a network of these shops that if your drivers are going down there and the call center gets a call that a vehicle's broken down in this area, we have somebody close to them. We want to help them out. It's a win-win for everybody. We have a lot of shops that are thinking about that extra revenue for themselves. And you got to remember, our training's $37.50 for a technician for 5 days. Those shop owners are so committed, they're paying those technicians for 40 hours of work while they're there. They're losing X amount of revenue, and an average flat rate around here is about $225, and they've lost 40 hours. They're investing $12,000 to send that technician on top of the $37.50. So ASA, we reach out to a lot of agencies and look for state or government agencies that are providing grants or funding. So ASA was very fortunate. Last year, we got a grant from CDOT, $150,000. And we were able to train over 50 mechanics throughout the state, which is really cool, on EVs. And we got a grant from the city and county of Denver to train technicians in the city and county Denver area on electric vehicles. So the $37.50 was wiped out for those technicians, but yet they still incurred the hourly rate they had to pay their technicians there and pay for the lost revenue they lost. So these guys are invested. So we look as ASA, we look for ways to help overcome some of this funding problems, challenges. So it's a great partnership. And people say, you send them to your training company. When I was at CDOT, I worked at CDOT before, they asked me to go out and survey shops and find quality shops, quality trainers for these shops. And I'll tell you, that's an interesting task Because when you go out there and look at this, training companies that were started during COVID, oh, we know electric vehicles are coming and we're going to start doing electric vehicle training. Let's start building a curriculum. Then you talk to these guys and say, okay, as a training company, how long have you been training? 20 years. Let me rephrase that question. As a training company, how long have you been training on electric vehicles? 2.5 years. For me, I'm very fortunate. My lead instructor has 26 years of teaching hybrids and electric vehicles. That's nothing to sneeze at. That's a quality instructor in the automotive and community college. Our other instructors, we have 4 instructors. We have over 120 years of experience teaching hybrid and electric vehicles. And we update our curriculum on an ongoing basis to all new technology. One of our schools that our instructors work at, and we upgrade our curriculum, gets new vehicles donated constantly. He has a 26 Escalade in there. 2026. He's reverse engineering the power steering, electric power steering, to answer questions in classes. And that's a huge win for us. I mean, I'm not the smartest guy on the block, but I can tell when we have quality instructors, and I'll tell you, I partner with those guys. And we've had 5 other instructors come to us and say, hey, we'd like to be part of your team, be part of your program. And we put them through a class, a week of training, and then we ask them to train us on what we just trained them. And they can't do it. I mean, we hold them to a pretty high standard. We don't want this just to be, oh, we got training in Florida, we got training in Texas. Let's just find a trainer and just send them. We go through it. We make sure that they're doing a great job. And these guys are investing. We want them to make sure they get the money worth. And there's not a standard electric vehicle technician certification other than the ASE certs right now, the 2 ASE certifications. So we tell the shops that are sending their technicians, do us a favor, sign them up for both those certifications the day they start our class. Within a week after they leave our class, have them take that test. If they fail, have them call us and we can talk to them about what they failed so we can help them get those certs. Because if they don't pass the test, we need to find out what they didn't get or what's missing in our training. So we do that. Yeah. We want them to have something that they take away besides just a certificate of completion from us. We want them to walk away, to take those 2 tests and be certified on electric vehicles from an ASE certification that's industry standard and recognized worldwide.
Great. So, Tom, what I'm hearing in what you just said, 2 things really stood out to me. The first is how much you care and the passion behind the value that shop owners are really investing into these techs and into this training. It's not just the cost of the training, but you recognize and appreciate the downtime of those techs not being productive in the shops. And I could hear the passion behind making sure that they get the value and the return on the investment for training in those techs, and that you follow up with the phone calls after the fact to say, make sure your guys go through and get this ASE cert on EV vehicles. And if they don't pass, tell us and we'll update the curriculum and we'll help you pass again to make sure again that these shop owners are getting the value that you were talking about. And then the other thing that really stood out to me while you were explaining everything was just the amount of care that goes into the curriculum development from you and your team, and the amount of expertise and years of experience that really goes into not just an understanding of the systems that you're teaching, but a lot of people who are married to teachers or who know teachers out there will appreciate this, but just because you're really good at something or you know something really well doesn't always mean you can teach it. But you guys have the experience in training and teaching as well as in the vehicles that you're teaching on. And I think that's a next level value add for shop owners that is just something I want to call attention to for anybody out there that's listening. I know one other thing you mentioned that I want to circle back around to. You mentioned like $40,000 to $50,000 investment in tools, and I have a feeling that some shop owners listening to the show probably had sticker shock a little bit of, oh man, that's a big investment. Talk to me about what a general shop needs just to keep their team safe, and then what they need to do basic stuff, and then what are the levels of investment in tooling probably that's needed between a general shop that needs to be EV aware versus somebody who's doing a little bit of EV maintenance work versus somebody that's really going all in.
Well, one of the first things that this shop did that I kind of talked about is they made sure that their racks could lift these heavier vehicles. And that was one of their first big investments. They made sure that they could do that before they even brought a vehicle in. After that, they bought a basic, complete installation, high voltage wrench set, socket set, screwdriver set. The pocket screwdriver you used to use in your pocket, that doesn't exist anymore. That's gone. That's the thing of the past. A lot of guys have invested in high voltage boots that they can wear in that area, or they make their technicians that are going to work on those to have special boots that are okay. I wear electrician shoes when I work on these vehicles with composite soles, not steel toes. And then they're going to be touching them high voltage gloves with leather covers. And the bad thing about those, they expire. Every 6 months, they got to be recertified. Or if one of your guys decides to get in a hurry and uses the rubber gloves without the leather covers and snags one, there's $130 right there. So they have to get those things, the basic hand tools, and then the face shielding, safety glasses. A lot of guys will get the high voltage bibs, and they ask them to do those before they can start taking a component apart. And they can take a lot of components off with those simple things. But you know what a set of Snap-on tools costs. Then you look at a set of high voltage gloves and high voltage tools. They're 2 to 3 times more expensive. Expensive?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say expensive. They're worth every dollar you pay if they keep you safe.
Yeah.
Then you upgrade your scopes, upgrade your multimeters. We use, and not to give them just a complete pat on the back, we really use a lot of fluke meters that can do milliohm meters. How many times have you used a milliohm meter? So now you have to upgrade your meters. And how many times are you using your old meter in the shop? They're really outdated. So make sure the rack is safe to lift up the vehicle. Make sure you got proper gloving and face shield and boots to touch the vehicles. If you're going to start pulling a few high voltage systems off, get those insulated tools to make sure what you're touching is safe.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. While you were talking, I know that David had some insights, but I also did too. What truly makes your training a little different? I know you do a lot of hands-on training. Why is it structured the way it is, and why is it so important?
We start off with low voltage, and we do a basic dive into it and a deep dive into it. If you can't get past that, then you'll never understand everything that controls the high voltage system. And a lot of technicians just need to have that reawakened. They don't do a lot of that. And then we teach them a lot of diagnostic techniques there. So we really focus on a lot. And we focus on the safety, how to safely rope off and corridor a vehicle, how to make sure if you've got more than one guy in there, the guy that's not working with you, put his hands in his pocket so he's not going over and poking stuff. So those are big things. Then we'll work on propulsion. Then we'll take a high voltage battery apart. And here's one of the biggest things. We bring 2 live vehicles into the shop. I never want to go into the shop and tell a guy, hey, I'm going to rip the battery out of your bus, get it down and break some tiny component inside the bus and tell the guy, I know you need to deliver kids next week, but this part's on back order for forever. And I just put him down a $250,000 school bus. So we have a Chevy Bolt that from the windshield forward, it has no metal, pretty much no metal. And you can see all the high voltage components exposed. You can pull whatever you want off that, put it back on. Nobody's going to drive that to the grocery store tonight. We can pull the battery out of it. We completely disassemble it. We take the cover off of it. We look at all the controlling in it. We look at the temperature sensors, and we put it back together. On our final day, we'll put a couple of codes in it, make sure the guys can clear those codes, make sure they're driving around. They'll put about 1.5 miles on it, bring it in, depower the low voltage, depower the high voltage, drain the coolant system, pull the battery all the way out of it, and take the cover off of it, check all this stuff, check for corrosion on the bus bars, put it all back together, put the cover back together. And when I say put the cover back together in depth, it's a two-stage torquing process that you have to put this cover on. Then you pressurize the cover and you'll make it swell up. It's your ski jacket, it breathes. So we'll cover the plugs on it, make sure it expands, make sure it holds pressure. If not, we've ruptured a seal or something. We put that back together. We put it all the way back in the vehicle. We put coolant in it. We'll run an electric motor, electric pump to pump the fluid back in it. We'll connect all the high voltage and get it running again, make sure we don't have any codes. And for them to fully understand that, we'd like it to flow that within 4 hours from driving it, pulling it in the shop, to driving it back out. Then they understand what they're doing. And the technicians test those. We do a lot of other testing. And if I took step by step, we'd be here for hours. But in a brief overview, that's what it
Four
is.
of them.
And we need to make sure that they understand the installation test. And
Yeah.
when you take a high voltage component apart and put it back on, how much resistance can be between those parts, and a lot of that stuff. And
Yeah.
when you ask me what makes it different, we spend 5 intense days. And so at the end of each day, we'll ask all the technicians, what did we not cover or what did we skip through? At the end of every day, we say, all right, you have homework tonight. And they're like, I want you to come back tomorrow with one question you think we didn't cover completely for you. Let's get that clarified before we go to the next step. They'll come in and everybody's got to give us a question. That's before we move on. And that's what we do every day, every day. At the end of our class, we make them do a really deep survey. And I tell them point blank, when you take the survey, be brutally honest. If you tell me I'm missing something or something's not right, I want to make sure we correct it for the next group. And if we didn't do something right today and you want to tell me in the survey or ask me now about it, let's know about it. It's only going to make us better for the next group. So those are
and
go ahead.
I'm glad you brought all that up because I wanted to highlight the kind of expertise and professionalism every shop owner should be looking at when they're deciding to invest in their employees and get them going, because it does make a difference, right? You had talked briefly about other trainings companies that came about during COVID and whatnot, and they may or may not be around, but it also just highlights that you need to be professional and that the training you send your techs to needs to be professional. And I knew you were going to give us an answer that was going to highlight that for you. So I appreciate that.
And
So
something else.
One thing I could ask on that, we recognize that we're not the only game in town. There's some great training companies out there. There are great training companies. I could go off on a list of them. When I was at CDOT, I interviewed 35 training companies that we were thinking about working with. And I'll tell you, there's some quality individuals out there doing this work. And I could go off on those guys. And so the one big thing we offer is we're in your shop. We're comparing your equipment to our equipment. We're looking at, hey, maybe you should reconsider before you do electric vehicles, this here or that here, or you need to move this drum here, or how do you have a clear access for your technicians to get completely out of a shop if you have a thermal runaway or something like that? Don't bury this vehicle in the back of the shop where you got to jump over 20 cars to get to. That's not where we want these cars. We want a clear path that your technicians are safe. And we can go into the shop and look at these things and have those conversations. And that's a big deal. And we look at their tools and they say, this is working. No, it won't. And let me tell you why. And we go in there and we do not sell a single tool. And they'll ask me, can I buy this tool from you? No, but this is where we bought ours from. And this is the pricing they gave us. And reach out to them, because I'm not there to sell tools. I'm there to tell them where we're at, what we use, and where we got them from.
That's great.
Yeah, I think that's excellent. And I would be remiss here. You've mentioned your CDOT and interviewing all these other training companies. We talked about training outside of just the EV space on our prep call. And in particular, I know you've worked with a lot of interns and a lot of young techs over the years. I want to know where you feel like most shops could improve on how they're using their interns and their young techs, and what separates a good internship program from one that kind of burns everyone out and makes techs not want to be in the industry?
That is a really good question. And I actually had a great example of that a month ago. We were offering our training and CDOT was paying the funding for it. And I went to a couple shops and said, hey, we've got this training, come take a look at it. And the guy says, the person that was running the shop said, hey, our lead technician's out on leave and we don't do any of that training. This young gentleman who's an intern who's changing oil, rotating tires says, hey, I'd really like to be the person that goes to your go-to guy on EVs. Our shop foreman said that you just do tires. He goes, I know, but if you look at my resume, this is what I do. I am an intern, but I've done this and this. And they were not taking full advantage of that. That guy, so he comes to our class and I mean, he's a whiz kid. He goes back to that shop and the person that oversees it says, I don't have any idea why they had you changing tires. We want you to be our electrical guy. We want you to go to the battery recycling. We want you to take this class. We want you to learn about charging stations. And that's why I go into shops sometimes and I look at these interns. You really need to shops that don't do a good job, don't really understand who they have coming in as an intern. And they need to spend a little bit more time talking to them, understanding. Yeah, everybody are down on their numbers for technicians and they just want to fill that bay. So they bring them in, make them do the light stuff that the A technicians just don't have time to do. But these interns, these community colleges are really are doing a great job on preparing these kids for their new life. They are doing a great job. I work with one community college and he does a great EV program. And one of his students just walked out of there and walked into Tesla. I mean,
That's great.
I would say the shops that are doing a great job understand and recognize their talent pool and let them have the opportunity to grow. The shops that don't, or that shop that just held that young guy down, and fortunate for him, the shop lead was out on leave and somebody in the shop he overheard our conversation, hey, pick me. And the training was being paid for. So the shop didn't really have to invest in it. And it was a government entity and they didn't have a lot. He was going to get paid anyway. So they sent him. And when he came back, they were so excited. Talk to your interns, really listen to what they can do.
Yeah. And if you're a young tech out there and you happen to be listening to the show, don't be afraid to speak up.
Yeah.
Yes.
Make sure you remind people what your background is, what your interests are, and not every opportunity is going to be handed to you in life or in this industry. Sometimes you got to speak up and go take it.
Yep. Yeah.
So you talked just briefly, and I love that point, David, because it's important for technicians to take a little ownership of their role. But as an owner, if you were going to talk to an owner, what would you recommend that they do? If they're going to take interest in their techs, what should an owner be asking if they're interested in like a person to do their hybrid or their batteries, et cetera?
As an owner, if I'm interested and they're an intern, what I would definitely tell them is, as an intern, they're usually working with an A technician and they want to work on electric vehicles and hybrids. Volunteer to do any electrical diagnostic car that comes in that the A tech is working on. Be right there. Ask those questions. That electrical is going to help you any place in your job. The radios, the electronic steering, the ADAS. So I would tell the shop owners, let them have an opportunity to work on a lot of the new technology. They're young. They're sponges. You get some of these guys that have been in the shop and they say, this is my lane. This is what I want to do. This is where I feel comfortable. And that's okay. And you get these new young guys in there that are sponges, feed them those things. Feed them the challenging cars. Let them be around them. And you'll just be surprised. And it'll be a good surprise how quickly, and these kids are smart. This next generation of young technicians, they're really sharp. I love being around them. But shop owners, let them be around this new technology. It's going to benefit you long term.
Yeah. When you mentioned staying in your lanes, and I know we've stayed in the consulting lane, but one of the things we really talked about on the prep call And our introduction to you and how we met was through ASA Colorado. And what I love about ASA Colorado, and this is a plug for us here locally in Colorado, you're not in this alone if you're a shop owner and you're a part of ASA Colorado. And for shop owners around this area and GMs who maybe aren't involved in ASA and are listening, just give them the real version. What is it that ASA Colorado does? How can it help shops around here from your perspective, Tom?
David, I love that question, and I'll tell you why I love it. The board has met the last couple months, and that's been our biggest thing. If I had to hand a flyer to a shop and say, this is who ASA is. So we are a group of independent shops. Do we always do everything right? No, but I can tell you what, our biggest focus today is helping train the new group of technicians coming up. We just brought a young lady onto our board, and she is all about training. She stays in partnership with Napa, AutoZone, and other training companies, and she puts out a monthly bulletin of where this training is and the costs. And we're going to start posting that on our website. And we just hired another person to update our website. So training is what we're all about. And the other thing is we're a lot about outreach. We want to make sure that we're engaged with the community colleges and high schools. I bet if you took a look at our ASE members, I personally am on the board of 6 community colleges. I have other guys that are on 2 or 3 boards. We want to be invested in the young group. And so we learn about that. We learn about it, where the apprenticeship programs are coming from. I just met with the Department of Corrections. They have a complete automotive program, and they have some young guys that want to become interns and move out of their program. And we're talking to several shops about bringing them in. Our training, we provide that. We look for funding all the time to help offset some of that cost. All the time we're looking for funding for that. We're sponsoring a car show next weekend in Colorado Springs because we want to, and the car show is for Intellitech Community College. We want to be involved in that. And we do a yearly summit and we invite all the shops. It's a great cost. And we bring in some great instructors. This year, we're going to start in June with a person that we just hired to start reaching out to all the instructors we have. We want to start marketing. If you're an independent shop owner, you can look at these trainings and you can start planning for what's going to be coming in the future. So we're really focused on training, and it's about making sure that these young guys have what they need for their career in the future. And it's for them, for the young guys, for the guys, all the guys in the shops that want to advance their, and we just want to help them. We kid sometimes that technicians are nomadic. They'll go from one shop to another shop. And we all know that. It's something, but you know what? If you train them and make them quality technicians, if they go away and come back, you've trained a quality technician and everybody's benefiting from it.
Yeah. And I think it's a really great thing to point out to our listeners that being involved in your local associations is just as powerful as being involved in a national association, because the local ones are literally your guys next door that you can go to if you have a problem, that know additional funding or additional training within your area, or know a trainer like Tom that can come and help out. Get involved in those. Don't be afraid. Don't feel weird if you've been in the industry for 25 years. Yes. Have you seen a couple of trainers that a couple of times? Probably. But guess what? Those trainers will inevitably have one golden nugget, just like this show, that you could take away, take back to your shop and help improve it. And don't be afraid to invest in your staff and send them to these things. They get a kick out of it. They love going there. They love seeing all the vendors. They love talking to people. They love seeing all the new software equipment and hearing the training. So invest in your people and participate in a program just like ASA out there.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, Paul. That is so true. And last comment to that is when you invest in them, they realize how much you care about them. And that's the big thing.
Absolutely.
They understand, oh man, my boss is going to send me to this. They're going to send me to that. And they think, man, this isn't too bad of a place to work. If this guy's invested in me, I get to work with a bunch of technicians that are like me and we're working together to all be better. That's a great point, Paul. It's great point.
And for longtime listeners of the show, you'll remember our expert spotlight session with Chris Lawson on hiring. And one of the things he talked about was differentiating your shop and making sure that you're seeing the technicians as individuals and not as just warm bodies filling a role. And I think that doing things like investing in their training through ASA Colorado or through ZEVTech Consulting is a really good example of how you can invest. So, Tom, one of the questions that we ask everybody that comes onto the show, obviously the phrase honest is really important to us with the Honest Garage podcast. And you guys know, and our listeners know, we own Honest Mechanic Marketing as well. I want to know what that phrase honest garage, honest shop, honest mechanic, what does that mean to you personally? And how does that show up in the way that you're training and leading the people in the industry?
Well, honesty is everything to me. It's your word. If you can't be honest, then you have nothing. And you can go into a shop and you can tell how the aura of the shop is, whether they're in unison or not, or they're backstabbing it, and that makes the shop not as clean and honest. There are some really quality shops out there, but let's be honest, there are shops out there that we have challenges with. Everybody does. And the big thing about that is, I'm just going to tell you my story about being a parts and service director in a dealership. I worked a little bit later, and one night I was walking through the shop, and on top of what my lead technician, he was a shop supervisor, were brand new parts. And I thought, is he going to be working on that car tomorrow, or what's the deal? So I pulled up all his tickets, looked at the part numbers, and those part numbers were on a ticket that was closed out that day, and it was a very expensive ticket. And he wasn't honest. He was cutting corners, and he was making more money than anybody. So next day he came into the shop, his bay was very clean, everything was on top of his toolbox, and he was all packed up, ready to go. And he said, what's going on? I said, I brought those 3 parts out, and I said, this is what's going on. You built them out for a car yesterday, and you didn't put them in. He goes, I'm your highest producer. I got to cut corners sometimes to be your highest producer. I said, if that's the way you've done it, then that's wrong, and that's on me. We don't do that here. You're gone. And he threw a fit, and we applied at a couple other shops, and we know everybody in the industry. They call me and ask me for a reference, and you can only say so much. And I did say so X amount. But to me, it's, you go into a shop and you watch a young guy start to do something wrong, and then you ask them, you're cutting a corner there. Would you do that on your parents' car? And they look at me and say, absolutely not. And I said, then why are you doing it on their car? Yeah. And it's just things like that. And you know what? Sometimes they think that corner is going to make it better. Things, you just got to train them right from the beginning. And that's why when I was a shop manager, my last one, I had 52 technicians. I had 3 team leads and a shop foreman. Every Friday, I'd buy them breakfast, and we would talk about what's wrong, what's right. And I said, this is your minute to be brutally honest with me. And sometimes I didn't want to pay for breakfast, I'll tell you, after those conversations, but they were brutally honest, but it made us a better shop. But on the other side, when we did really well, they got rewarded for them. One month we were the top shop of this dealership, of this OEM in the nation. I bought them steak and salmon for lunch, and they talked about that for months, and they strived to be that shop again. And they would tell me, guys would come and go, I don't want to be a snitch, but let's check on this. We'd bring the technician in, we'd talk on him, and he'd understand that's not the way we do it. And at the end of the day, that's all you got in your shop. If you're honest, it'll show up in your feedback. And that feedback will kill you or make you. So let's make it make you.
There you go. I love that advice. And I think that's a good place for us to get to wrap the episode, just so we don't run too awful long here for the listeners. I just want to say, Tom, huge thank you so much for being on the show, for sharing your knowledge. And I'm going to remind everybody out there, it's ZEVTech Consulting. And we talk about ASA Colorado, of course, as well. And I just want to say thanks again for bringing that calm and practical approach to EV readiness without fear or hype or pretending that things are what they aren't. And without kind of this idea that everybody has to become an EV specialty shop overnight. It was real practical advice that I think our listeners are going to get real value from.
Well, thank you. It was a real pleasure to be here, and I appreciate you inviting me. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And before we sign off, one of the things that we love to do with the Honest Garage podcast is build the community of other shop owners. And if somebody wants to connect with you or dig deeper on something we didn't have time to get down into the weeds on today, what's the best way for them to connect with you about training or ASA Colorado or anything that you've got going on in your network?
You know what? I'll just throw out my ASA info at asacolorado.org. And my company, I look at those all the time, so you don't have to remember 2 or 3 emails. Just remember that, ASA info at asacolorado.org. And they're an amazing group of guys. I can just tell you, it's really an honor to be with them. And yeah.
And if you're listening to the show and you just want to take one thing away today, just know that it's training. Training isn't overhead, it's risk management and future proofing for your shop. And with all the changes coming around, you need to find good trainers and you need to invest in your people. Couple things for you to kind of keep a lookout that we talked about was the safety that you bring in with the equipment, knowing the rules within your own procedures, and again, making sure that you have somebody who is truly going to take ownership of those positions in your shop is really going to make a difference.
Yeah. And if you're out there listening and you got value from today's episode, obviously reach out to Tom, take him up on that offer. But if you're getting value from the show in general, we'd really love it if you'd share it with another shop owner or general manager or senior service writer out there. Subscribe so that you don't miss the next specialist series or spotlight series and the next shop owner story. Leave us a review. It helps more shop owners find the show the same way that it helps customers find your shops. It really means a lot, and we do take the time to read them when they come in. So thank you.
And if you're also interested in other topics that you would like covered, whether that be additional HR, legal, recruiting, software, marketing, send us in some submissions and we'll take a look at that and we'll find an expert that can shed their intelligence and their insights with you.
Yeah. And then obviously we mention this on every episode, but if you need or want to talk with us about marketing, we're always here and happy to do that. You can head over to honestmechanicmarketing.com, fill out a form. Be happy to have that conversation. And just one more time, Tom, thank you again for sharing all of your knowledge and wisdom on the show today. And everybody out there, thank you for listening. Thanks for letting us do this show that we enjoy doing so much. And as always, keep it honest in the garage, everybody.